Republicans pitched, Kevin McCarthy put out his pitch for, they called it a commitment to America on this. And part of it in there was accountability, and it's kind of vague. But you've heard some of the details, and I know you've talked about the idea that there may be a special select committee. Do you expect an impeachment vote against President Biden if Republicans take over the House?
I believe there's a lot of pressure on Republicans to have that vote, to put that legislation forward and to have that vote. I think that is something that some folks are considering.
Wow.
Again, I'm someone who wants to, I want to follow the Constitution. It's really important. Oversight's important.
That's Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace of South Carolina on Meet the Press just last month. Let's bring in staff writer for The Atlantic, Barton Gellman. He predicts in a new piece for the magazine, Republicans will impeach President Biden if the party retakes control of the House, and that they might not stop there. Barton, good morning. It's good to see you. So let's start first with, we can get to what the charge might be against Joe Biden in a moment. But if you talk privately, some of them say it out loud publicly, but when they step off the set, most Democrats concede that the House is gone. It's just a question of the margin and by how much they're going to lose here in the next couple of weeks. If that is true and Republicans control the House, there are a number of them. Some of them, by the way, have already tried to introduce articles of impeachment against him, but who have said they definitely will. What does that look like exactly? When do they start? And what kind of pressure will they be under from Donald Trump, who, after all, is the boss from whom they take their orders?
Well, if you think about it, impeachment is sort of the mathematical corollary of the big lie. If you've been led to believe that the president is illegitimate, that he's in the White House and the Oval Office by cheating, then if you're not joining a militia, then the least of the remedies you'll accept is his removal. And so you already have the same 2/3 of all Republicans who believe that Biden is illegitimate also support impeachment. And interestingly, well over half of Republicans believe there will be impeachment. And House Republicans are going to ignore that sentiment at their peril. There is already going to be a considerable amount of pressure from the base for retribution for the impeachments of Donald Trump and for all the investigations of Trump. And you had, it's not well known, you just referred to it, already in Biden's first 2 years, he's been subject to close to a dozen impeachment resolutions. Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced one on the very first day of his presidency. You don't hear about them because with Republicans in control of the House, they simply disappear. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's not going to schedule floor time or referral to a committee for a resolution like that. But Kevin McCarthy, whether he wants it or not, is not going to be able to ignore this pressure for impeachment.
And as you write in the piece, Barton, there's an expectation among Republican voters that their representatives will undertake these articles of impeachment. You cite a UMass Amherst poll that shows almost 70% of Republicans say Joe Biden should be impeached, 7 out of 10 Republicans. So these Congress people, these men and women, feel like they're doing their jobs by introducing these articles of impeachment. And also because the President of the United States, let's be honest, could be indicted in the coming weeks. So the bar and the expectation,
yes.
the former president, excuse me, for the bar for the retribution, the stakes will have been raised, which gets to the next question. On what charges would they impeach Joe Biden? What is in front of them? What do they believe they can get him on?
Well, first of all, to some extent, there are Republicans who say it doesn't even really matter, that impeachment is going to come in revenge for what was done to Trump. And Ted Cruz said whether it's justified or not, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so the exact specifications of the charge are to be determined, but something to do with Hunter Biden is one likely possibility. They are going to try to tie the president to the misadventures of his son in Ukraine, in China, his business dealings, and so on. There has yet to be any publicly known evidence that ties the two together. But they'll certainly be looking. There have already been impeachment resolutions in the current Congress because of the disorderly withdrawal from Afghanistan, because of the extension of rent, a freeze on rent increases, because of the use of the strategic oil reserve. Name your issue, but Republicans have not yet settled on which one is actually going to make Biden vulnerable enough. And I should mention, impeachment is not Kevin McCarthy's plan. It is the plan of important, influential voices in the Freedom Caucus, and they are going to be amplified when Donald Trump gets around to talking about this. And my prediction is that Trump will call for Biden's impeachment. It's what he does.
So, Barton, you mentioned Hunter Biden. Republicans think that even a flurry of investigations into the president's son may even impact Joe Biden's decision whether or not to seek re-election, because of the toll that would be taking on his family. But tell us a little bit more. It's going to be more than just an impeachment of Joe Biden in this scenario, right? Like, they're going to go after cabinet members, Mayorkas and others. They're just going to try to snarl up the White House with as many investigations as possible. Tell us a little bit about that. But also, is there a way where Democrats could use that to their advantage, pointing to Republican overreach?
Well, exactly. That's the big political question. You put your finger on it. The Republicans are probably not going to start with Biden. What I hear most talk about is impeachment of the Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, for losing control of the border, as Republicans see it, or as they sometimes accuse him of failing to enforce American law to stop illegal immigration. There have already been impeachment resolutions offered in the current term, also against Anthony Blinken, against Merrick Garland, and against the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Lauren Boebert came up with the interesting argument that Harris should be impeached for failure to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove Biden from office. But if Republicans overreach, if they try to impeach Biden on grounds that the American public considers to be insufficient or trivial, then this could very well redound to Biden's benefit. That's what happened with Bill Clinton, even though he had, in fact, lied under oath about Monica Lewinsky. When Congress, when the House impeached him, the American people didn't like it, and his popularity increased, and and the Democrats did better in the next election cycle.
And in case you thought Barton was exaggerating what Ted Cruz said, I just pulled it up. This was in January of this year on his podcast. When asked about impeachment, he said, "I do think there's a chance of that, whether it's justified or not. Quote, what's good for the goose is good for the gander." And as you weigh all the reasons the Republicans say they may want to impeach Joe Biden, let's recall that President Trump was impeached twice, one for leading an attempted coup against the United States government to overturn an election, and another time for trying to get political dirt on his opponents holding up aid to Ukraine. The piece online now for The Atlantic. Barton Gellman with a bit of a disturbing look, preview of coming attractions here next year. Barton, thanks so much.